Mutable has the superpower of adaptability, changeability, going with the flow. Welcome to Promethea Astrology. My name is Aleena, and I am a full-time professional astrologer with a physics BS from Yale. Today, we're talking about the mutable signs in astrology. I've already covered the cardinal and the fixed signs if you want to check that out. This is a part of a series I'm doing. I've already made a planetary playlist doing a deep dive into each of the planets. Now I'm doing the modalities, and then I'll do the elements, and I also did one on gender. And then I will go through each sign in the zodiac, each house, and then we can get into more complicated concepts like aspects and start delineating different things. But I wanted to make sure that I had the foundation laid for everybody. So if you need to kind of bolster your learning and get back to the foundations, here are the fundamental concepts that you need to understand in astrology. So I'll start broadly defining what a modality is, and then I'll get into what it means to be mutable specifically, and then we will delineate what the mutable signs are like and what about their nature is mutable, which are going to be Pisces, Gemini, Sagittarius, and Virgo. So modality is also known as quadruplicity in ancient astrology. I'm a Hellenistic astrologer, and people use both of these terms. So what it means, quadruplicity or modality, is whether or not a sign is cardinal, fixed, or mutable. And what essentially defines that is whether or not a zodiac sign falls at the beginning of a season, the middle of a season, or the end of a season. So cardinal signs happen at the beginning of the season, fixed signs are the middle of the season, and mutable signs are the end of the season. So if you're using the tropical zodiac, this is actually where the zodiac comes from, is the equinoxes and solstices. But if you use the sidereal zodiac, then you will actually be looking at where the constellations are in real time. So because of precession and the wobble of the Earth's axis, the zodiac signs are no longer where they were at the conception of the zodiac. So some astrologers, Vedic astrologers, use the sidereal zodiac instead, which does. But then it doesn't really make sense to use these modalities because the modality or quadruplicity is related to the zodiac as it's defined by the seasons, which is what we'll get into here since I am a Western astrologer who uses the tropical zodiac. So broadly, what each of these things mean, what is it to embody the qualities of the beginning? So the cardinal signs tend to be better, stronger at initiating things. It's sort of forward motion, getting things started. I think of the key word for the cardinal signs as influence. So it's also this inclination towards kind of projecting things outward, and that will depend on what the element is. So each quadruplicity has each of the four elements as an embodiment of it in the zodiac. So there's cardinal air, cardinal fire, cardinal earth, and cardinal water. So the type of influencing a cardinal sign might want to do will be correlated with the element. So cardinal fire is influencing the environment in this more energetic, almost forceful way. Cardinal water is interested in influencing emotionally and has that superpower. Cardinal air has a much more social, mental, intellectual type of influence that it wants to bring. And then cardinal earth has a more material, practical, tangible kind of influence that it wants to create. For the fixed signs, I think of the middle of the season, the fixed nature, as being related to integrity. The fixed signs have this staying power. They are stronger at seeing things through, being consistent. On the shadow side, a little bit slower, potentially more rigid or stubborn. Fixed has that stability, that groundedness. So the type of stability that each of the signs will be embodying depends on the element. So fixed earth has this nice integrity, consistency with the types of material things that it enjoys in the environment. Fixed air has much more kind of intellectual integrity and commitment to ideology or thought systems. Then fixed fire is very much committed to integrity of the self and self-expression, and also to their passions. Fixed water is very much committed to emotional integrity. and depth. Now, to go deeply, so if you want to learn more about those things, you can see my last videos there. But for this video, we're going to focus on the mutable signs. So what does it mean to be mutable? So mutable signs come at the end of the season, so they are on the in-between, going from this to that. Mutable has the superpower of adaptability, changeability, going with the flow. On the shadow side, all of these things have both positive and negative sides to them. Nothing is just one thing. There's two sides to every coin. So the shadow side to mutability can be struggles with things like consistency, or could be a little bit flighty, a little bit ungrounded. And I think the key word for mutable is changeable. This is the strength of mutable signs. So to get into the specifics and kind of articulate how each of the mutable signs is embodying this mutable nature, we will start with mutable air, Gemini. Gemini is the end of spring. So Gemini as mutable air, air is already the lightest, most changeable element in the first place. And Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which is the most mutable, changeable, adaptable planet that is so many things. So I think Gemini is probably the most exaggerated expression of what it is to be mutable. Gemini likes to do everything. Lots of hobbies, lots of interests. As the mutable air sign, it's particularly mental, loves to think. Air is also social, so likes to be quite playful and social. Gemini is anything you need him to be. Good at just about anything, wanting to try everything. It depends on, of course, if this will be a Gemini sun, moon, Mercury, etc., which planet, but in general, archetypally, Gemini is the communicator, and the strengths of Gemini will be learning quickly, adapting to new situations, navigating social environments playfully. And then the shadow side of Gemini is that sometimes there can be a bit of a struggle with integrity, or not even really knowing or understanding integrity on a deep level. As an air sign, Gemini is very interested in thinking about lots of different things. Air is the furthest away from Earth, Earth being related to things that are practical and grounded. Gemini is not really interested in the material reality and enjoys just adapting this fun, playful, free-spirited approach to thinking about things. So in a relationship with a Gemini, it can be confusing sometimes to be like, well, who are you underneath it all? What do you really believe in? Is this you, or is this you because it's who you think you need to be in this context? And so that can be a struggle sometimes for Gemini. Or committing to one thing. Gemini likes to do lots of things. And so, sometimes to be effective, you kind of have to zero in, focus, and kind of go for that one thing. But that is not what Gemini is inclined to do. Gemini wants to try lots of things at different times. Maybe circle back, maybe not. And then Virgo is mutable earth. So earth is probably the least compatible with being mutable of all the elements. Earth is the least wanting to change of fire, water, earth, and air. Earth likes to be solid and rigid. And this mutable sign, Virgo, is also ruled by the planet Mercury, already very mutable and has strengths in communication and doing lots of different things. But for the Earth version of Mercury, for the Earth version of a mutable sign, Virgo is much more oriented towards the real world and what is practical and makes sense to do. But they are going to take this very logical approach to it as a sign ruled by Mercury, which is very much about the details and sorting out things, organizing them, getting into the nitty-gritty. And so that will be Virgo's superpower. And they are able to adapt very easily in these earthly realms. Virgo is very good at getting stuff done in the real world. Virgo is on top of their health routines, the body, how they're appearing, getting the logistics sorted out for things. So taking that adaptability, but applying it to all of these myriad of earthly responsibilities that we have. And so the superpower of Virgo is adapting to the earthly necessities and getting things done in the real world and making things happen, sorting out the details of things. And the shortcoming of mutable Earth can be a little bit neurotic sometimes. Or maybe it's the way that Earth is so different from being mutable and from Mercury, but sometimes another aspect of Mercury's nature and getting into the details can be kind of going too far with that and thinking things might need to be a certain way, or kind of obsessing to a level that is not necessarily always necessary. So that can cause sometimes Virgo to be a little bit neurotic. And maybe it's the way that this mutable nature doesn't really want to sit still. It can't be just in the end of it, finished in completion. This mutable nature just wants to keep going further, keep changing things around. Virgo can be kind of perfectionistic and just taking things to a really high degree. Next is Sagittarius, mutable fire. So Sagittarius is sort of the archetype of the gypsy. I think of mutable fire as like a forest fire spreading across. And so the way that this kind of manifests for Sagittarius, fire being related to the passions and physical energy and bravery, boldness, things like that. Sagittarius loves to kind of spread the gospel of whatever it is that they believe in. And this is also related to being ruled by Jupiter, which is our planet of God and justice and authority in some ways. So oftentimes Sagittarius will have something that they're very passionate about. Often it will be religious or political or philosophical, something like that. And this fire that they have around this thing, they enjoy to spread, move it around. They also love road trips, just getting around, kind of freedom and exploring. And the shadow side of this can be, again, sometimes the fire, the passion could be a bit much, and maybe sometimes people might be looking for more of this grounded, slower, stable energy, and Sagittarius will be ready to blast off and have a good time and light up the party, which is a beautiful thing, but is also not, necessarily needed for every situation. And then lastly, Pisces, mutable water. So water is more interested in what is mystical, intuitive, emotional, creative, healing type of stuff. So mutable water. Pisces is very adaptable and changeable in this emotional way. Pisces is quite empathetic, also ruled by Jupiter. So we have 2 Jupiter signs and 2 Mercury signs, as Jupiter and Mercury are always opposite to each other. Virgo ruled by Mercury, opposite to Pisces ruled by Jupiter. Gemini ruled by Mercury, opposite to Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter. So the Pisces version of Jupiter will not be this fiery, passionate thing, but rather this deep, emotional thing. Water is also oriented towards depth and merging. So Pisces is very much more inclined to adapt to the emotional environment. So they are very empathetic, likely to be able to feel and kind of take on the emotions of others. And this can be not just personal, but also collective for them. Water is also kind of related to the unconscious and the dream world. And in this way, Pisces is also quite skilled and adapted at navigating the dream world and the subconscious. They're kind of steeped in this collective unconscious and very much tapped into that layer of existence. And this is the way in which they are able to adapt and go with the flow with this numinous, collective, dreamy, imaginal, unconscious realm. And the shadow side of that can be a little bit of emotional overwhelm sometimes. Pisces can sometimes tend towards depression because feeling the collective emotions is not necessarily a net positive. There's a lot of suffering in the world that Pisces is very easily affected by and tuned into and feeling. Also is not things that are necessarily oriented towards real life things you need to get done. So when it comes to being effective, navigating the complexities of the earthly realm, that will not be a strength of Pisces either. But there's two sides to every coin. No sign is just good and no sign is just bad, or any of these other qualities. The cardinal signs have their positive and shadow sides, so do the fixed signs, and of course, so do the mutable signs. And also remember that you are not just one of these things. All of us have all 12 signs present in our chart representing different areas of life, even if the planets are not constellated in all of them. So you may have much more of one type of energy, maybe most of or even all of your planets are in cardinal signs, but there will still be other pieces of the chart that are in other signs. So no one is just one thing. We all contain multitudes, and there is so much nuance and complexity that we can pull out of this. One thing that is a little bit confusing about the modalities or quadruplicities is this word quadruplicity itself. At least to me initially, I thought that was confusing because there are only 3, but quad usually evokes the number 4. So quadruplicity, even though we have cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs. The reason why there are 3 different quadruplicities is because when you divide the 12 zodiac signs by 3, you get 4. And there are 4 different signs of each quadruplicity. So 4 fixed signs, 4 mutable signs, and 4 cardinal signs. And the fact that there are 4, and when you draw a line between them, it makes a square, this visual geometry and the numerology behind this is significant. So the square in astrology symbolically is a more challenging aspect. Opposition is the most challenging. I think of this as like the Harry Potter ones with Voldemort. One of us has to die. There's no way to resolve this. And a square is more like could potentially be generative tension, but it is very tense. It's not an easy aspect. It does not feel good, but it can result in something. So when things have an aspect in astrology, it's because they're able to see something in the other. So in the ancient etymology of the word aspect, it literally means to witness. And so they're able to see and relate to each other. Aspects are kind of like relationships between planets and signs and things. They're able to relate to each other because they share a quality. So for instance, in a whole sign system, all square aspects will be between signs that share the same quadruplicity. Trines will be between signs that share the same element. Sextiles will be between signs that share the same gender. And then the opposition will be between signs that share the same gender and quadruplicity. And so although these signs relate to each other in this way, the mutable nature in me sees the mutable nature in you. We're able to connect on this level because we share this quality of being mutable. They don't necessarily get along for that reason. It can actually be difficult for these signs. Even though they recognize this nature in each other, it has a different elemental quality. And so the way that I want to be mutable is different from the way that you want to be mutable. And that is a source of tension between us sometimes. So for instance, Virgo is opposite to Pisces. They are both mutable, but they are mutable in opposite ways. They're opposite to each other in the zodiac. So Pisces is the mystic and Virgo is the practicalist. So Pisces is interested in transcendence and cosmic union and the dream world and creativity and art. And Virgo wants to do what makes sense, what is relevant right here, right now, and get things done in a way that's realistic and logical. So although they both share this mutable nature, they want to do their mutable things in very different realms that they don't necessarily recognize in each other. This is the nature of not sharing an elemental quality. So that's just an interesting piece to note. If you have multiple cardinal signs in your birth chart, this could actually be a source of inner tension within you, depending on which planets are represented there and what houses those are for you. So that's all I have for you today. If you have some mutable energy going on in your chart, let us know what that looks like for you. If you have any insight into what it means to be mutable that I might have missed here, would love to hear your thoughts about that. and know that I offer consultations if that's ever something you're interested in. I offer 60 or 90-minute consultations where we can get into, in the shorter ones, the birth chart as a symbol of who you are, strengths and weaknesses, areas of development, and maybe dive into different parts of life if you want to talk about your relationship to money or relationships in general or career or parents or anything like that. And then the longer 90-minute consultations are all of that, plus getting into your timing. What's happening in your future? What cycle are you in right now? When can you expect that to shift? So if you are interested in either of those things, you can go to my website and book a consultation there. You could also subscribe here. That really helps me and supports my work. Or you could also follow me on Instagram, especially if you're in Philadelphia. I do lots of in-person workshops and I'm out and about in the community and doing events and such. So if you need me for a bachelorette party or just are interested in learning more and connecting with other real life humans about it, I do hold space for that. So let me know. And thank you so much for being here.